Are you a businesswoman who is finding it challenging to get your ideas across and make a point? Welcome to Speakers Who Get Results with Elizabeth Bachman, a podcast dedicated to helping women get the visibility they want, whether making a speech or talking in a meeting. Every week, get valuable lessons from Elizabeth or learn from her roundtable conversations with experts and speakers on how to make a difference, not just a point. On to the show with your host, Elizabeth Bachman.
Hello and welcome to Speakers Who Get Results. I'm Elizabeth Bachman, your host, and this is the podcast where we talk about presentation skills, leadership, diversity, and intercultural communication. And this podcast today is to launch Hispanic Latinx Heritage Month. So we are celebrating experts who happen to have the Latinx or Hispanic heritage. And my guest today is Kathleen Chávez-Rège, who has good things to tell us about LatinaVIDA, an organization that she's been part of from the beginning, as is on the board. The official bio is Kathleen Chávez-Rège is a trusted advisor committed to working with people of diverse backgrounds from mid-career through C-suite to explore and strengthen their identity and embrace the confidence to take advantage of new ways of engaging. In addition to serving on the board of directors for LatinaVIDA since 2015, she also provides executive coaching to leaders dedicated to creating diverse, participative, and inclusive cultures that become the foundation for shaping their organizations, its talent, and how it performs. She's a native of Silicon Valley with a Bachelor of Science in Organizational Psychology. Her vision and guidance strengthening leadership impact is grounded in over 30 years' experience leading organizations in companies from startups to Fortune 100. Kathleen's philosophy is that we each have the hidden potential, and it's important to our health, sanity, and general well-being to take time to invest in ourselves, to figure things out, to consider alternatives, and harness new pathways that bring us peace and strength. So now on to the interview with Kathleen Chávez-Rège. Kathleen Chávez-Rège, thank you so much for joining us on Speakers Who Get Results.
Thank you, Elizabeth. I'm so happy to be here.
Well, I'm delighted to have you. We had a little back and forth to get you on here, but I'm excited to talk about you and this topic and to kick off Hispanic Latinx Heritage Month with you. So this is good. But before I get into asking about all the interesting things that you've done, tell me who would be your dream interview? If you could talk to somebody who's not normally around, who would it be? What would you ask them? And who should be listening?
Who it would be is a woman who was a really strong advocate and sponsor of mine. And I didn't realize it until after she had passed away. But her input and support catapulted my career for me. And she was a Latina, and the opportunities that she opened the doors for me changed my life, and they changed my career trajectory. And what I would tell her is that is just that she had the most significant impact on my career and my self-confidence.
Mm-hmm.
She believed in me that I could do things that I never would have thought of myself. And the people who should be listening, I think, are women who are in a position to empower and support and sponsor and be advocates for other women, as well as young women. Her name is Connie Simmons.
Okay.
And young women who are interested in developing their career should seek people to be their sponsors and to understand that developing strong relationships can often result in, without you knowing it, somebody being an advocate for you. Mm-hmm. And it was just a wonderful, it launched me into a career that I have always loved.
Oh, good. It sounds wonderful. Yes, to be able to go back and say thank you to the people who helped you early on.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you didn't realize it as much at the time. So, yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Well, that's great. So, tell me, Kathleen, you've had an interesting career in computing
Mm-hmm.
and in Silicon Valley. We're talking today about Hispanic Heritage Month and facing discrimination. What
Mm-hmm.
did you learn about discrimination in your early career, working in materials and supply chains and all of that?
My role early on, like the foundation of my career and everything that I've ever done was basically built upon a grounding in first in trying to get people to do something new that was very foreign to them, and doing that in empowering employees who didn't have a voice to be able to speak up and make decisions and be more engaged in their work. These were primarily employees who were immigrants, first generation, non-native English speakers, and they represented about 10 different countries.
Mm,
And so it was in that setting that I really realized the systemic discrimination that takes place in organizations, not only from the white leadership and the power base that was in place, but also between and amongst themselves.
okay. What were you actually doing?
I was working with hundreds of employees throughout probably a 5-year span to help them understand how to solve problems and to speak up, how to make decisions, how to advocate for themselves rather than having to go and seek permission or to speak to a supervisor or to wait until a staff meeting when they're asked for input, but to really get them to take initiative to speak up. And a lot of that came from helping them kind of ground themselves in what their identity was, that they
Mhm.
were smart, they were a, a machine operator, or they were a stock clerk, but that they had the expertise to do their job better than anybody else.
Mhm. Um, so as you were doing this, did it work helping people to speak up? Did it make a difference?
Oh, it was huge. I think one of the statistics was they would always measure quality in manufacturing
Mhm.
organizations, right? And the quality was probably about 70% first pass quality. And we got it up to Six Sigma, which is 9.966666. And that was done because we had influential folks out there in the manufacturing operations who stepped up to be informal leaders and then ultimately to be more formally responsible for operations. But they encouraged their colleagues. I mean, some of these people, especially the women that were working in those organizations, they didn't have a voice at home. So for
Mhm.
them to have a voice at work was really significant. And it was wonderful. It was one of the best periods of time for watching individuals really find their voice, find their power, and then take initiative to do things differently.
Mhm. Okay. And in the course of all of this, you were present for the beginning of LatinaVIDA,
Yes.
which is, and where you're on the board now. Tell us
Mhm.
a little bit about what LatinaVIDA does and how it got started. You were
So,
driving somewhere, right?
well, so Latina Vida is focused on helping young women, people of color, people in underrepresented groups really find their identity and their voice and empower them to take the initiative to develop their careers, not let their career happen to them, but for them to take a stake in and start driving their future.
Mhm.
And actually, the way it started was our founder, Maria Hernandez, and two other women, Sylvia Santalinda Moreno and Yulia Arellano Sullivan, they got together and were talking about what it took for them to be successful in their careers, and talking about the things that they were observing that was missing for Latinas in the different careers or being around a table. And they noticed, and Maria and I noticed as well, that we had the fortunate opportunities to be at the table with decision makers. And so as Maria and I were commuting, Maria Hernandez and I, we have been consulting colleagues for about 25 years. And we would talk all the time about what it took to be successful in this white man's world. And so I feel very fortunate to have been early on in discussion with Maria about LatinaVIDA and what it meant. And then she invited me to become a board member. And I'm delighted and pleased with the progress that we've made over the last 10 years. And I'm really touched by the dedication of all of the volunteers that we have that help make LatinaVIDA successful today.
So if somebody is curious, feeling that they need help, what can you get at LatinaVIDA? What does the organization provide?
Oh, we provide a number of different programs. Primarily, we have four programs that are really focused and geared towards career development. The first one is called Rise to the Top, and Poder. So Poder is a leadership academy, and we partner with different organizations to sponsor the program within their group, their organization. And it's focused on different learning opportunities, networking. We bring in guest speakers and sponsorship programs so that over the course of, it's about, usually we do one session a month. Sometimes we'll do two a month inside the organization. And we help make sure that the organization gets what they want out of it, which is to retain, attract, and promote women and people of color. And we make sure that the candidates in the program have those skills and confidence to be able to step up for those opportunities. We also have a public Rise to the Top program that we offer quarterly. And this is aimed more towards women and people of color with 5 to 7 years experience. And it's a really fast-paced program. We bring in speakers. We have homework assignments every week. And it culminates with them really having architected a vision for their career and a playbook as well to help guide them through that journey. We have another program that we recently started for college students. It's called Rise, and it's a multi-year program. We try and get our participants in their freshman year, and it's really to help them navigate college and then make that transition into the workforce when they graduate. For corporations, we have another program called Hola, which focuses on helping organizations develop their employee resource groups or inclusion councils, and we provide resources and best practices to help organizations implement those. We provide one-on-one coaching, coaching service. We have 16 coaches at LatinaVIDA right now. And then we have a number of different outreach channels. We do blogs, we have 2 podcasts a month and a newsletter and Twitter groups and networking teams and things like that. So we provide a number of different services.
Okay. And what sort of impact have you had? Tell us some stories.
Well, so we don't typically ask our participants if we can tell their stories. So I will take that back to LatinaVIDA because I think it's a great question. But we, I'll share 3 different stories.
You could change the names, but describe the situation.
Yeah, for sure I will. So we have right now about 26 different marquee organizations that we're working with. And these range from retail to high tech, healthcare industry, transportation, education, finance. We run the gambit across different sectors. And in those programs, the primary focus, as I mentioned, for those organizations is retention, promotion, and recruitment of talent. So the three stories that I'll share, one is a woman who came to us for career coaching. She didn't go through one of our on-site programs, but her focus was to understand and look at what it would take for her to get a promotion from being a communications and outreach manager to becoming a global director for communications team. And when we do coaching, we coach with the same profile and focus as the LatinaVIDA program.
Mm-hmm.
And what she said about her coaching experience, it took 6 months for her to get her promotion. And I have a quote from her. She said, I used to have a fear about voicing my opinion at work because of my imposter syndrome and wondered what people would think. Now I'm not afraid anymore. And when I do use my voice and give my opinion on projects, I'm not afraid. And if they don't accept my input, that's okay. I let it go and move forward. I stay true to the mission of the organization, and I work on bringing my authentic self to work every day. So that's just a wonderful testament, I think, to what LatinaVIDA is really about.
That is wonderful. Wow.
Yeah.
And you were talking about someone who then has now risen in the organization, started as a volunteer. And tell us about her.
Yeah, she came to us as a volunteer. She's a PhD student, and we were always happy and can use the help of volunteers. So she came on board as a volunteer and then moved into taking a role that included a stipend. And her focus was outreach for LatinaVIDA and getting us in contact with different organizations and speakers and things like that. And she became a facilitator of Rise to the Top program. And as a result of her leading those discussions, having all these conversations with participants about the challenges and what they were finding valuable in the program, she, of course, interpreted and included all of these exercises for herself. And she was able to land a role, her first job, as a diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging specialist. And we're really proud of her. She just did excellent work for us. She was with us for about 3 years as she went through her program. And she really helped us understand not only the early career component of LatinaVIDA, but as well that transition program for people who are moving out of college and into their professional careers. And then we had one more story that I'll share with you. This is a woman who participated early on in one of our first corporate Rise to the Top programs. It was with Microsoft. And she was a senior manager at the time. And throughout the program, she was really focused on making sure that her career journey was realistic and she had the right people on her team and she understood networking and she was focused on not only developing advocates and making sure that she had advocates, but also becoming an advocate for others. And we were really proud to hear that she was promoted from being a senior manager to a global director for Microsoft, which is a huge shift in the focus for her career. So that was just wonderful. She credits our career playbook in helping her stay focused on her journey. She said that she still uses it to this day. So it's wonderful to hear that our tools are pervasive. They will last.
That's great. That's very exciting too. So it's a wonderful organization, and we'll put links in the show notes so we can tell you a little bit about that.
Yeah, that'd be great.
One more thing about LatinaVIDA, and then I'm going to ask you another question about the work that you do. But you told me the other day what vida stands for. It means life in Spanish, but it also you use it as an acronym.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
So Vida, when Julia and Santa Linda and Maria were really thinking about what does it take to be successful, it was the visibility, identity, determination, and action.
Mm-hmm.
And those take on different meanings for our participants, whether I'm applying those to myself or if I'm moving through different stages of my career. It can apply differently to, determination and having a commitment when I'm just focused on my establishing my career is different than if I am in a difficult situation and I want to be able to work through it.
Mm-hmm.
So they are flexible definitions for those words, but it's visibility, identity, determination, and action.
I love it. As a visibility is all what I'm all about. So that's always exciting. Next question for you
Mm-hmm.
is, you talk a lot about politics and by these by workplace politics,
Mm-hmm.
basically, and how you can navigate the politics of a workplace that to really politics and perseverance. Tell me why those fit together and how they fit together.
Oh my goodness. So throughout my career, I was largely focused on helping organizations implement new things, new
Mm-hmm.
computer technology, new methodologies for getting work done, different go-to-market strategies, and that all required that somebody do something different than what they were
Mm-hmm.
comfortable doing. There's pushback everywhere in those situations. So what I discovered is that you get invited to sit at the table because I would get invited to sit at the table because we had these important decisions that needed to be made. But what was important to me was that they could see and hear what I had to say and understand why I was there. I was really there to make people's lives easier, but their filters were, oh my gosh, she's going to ask us for money and she's going to ask us to do
Mm-hmm.
something differently. So when I look at Vida being applied to perseverance and being able to understand how do you get a seat at the table and stay there, I define them a little bit differently. Visibility being not only what people see when you walk into the room, but also each of us we are the essence of who we are in the way we show up. So I can show up as a leader or I can show up as a follower. So visibility kind of takes on that sort of definition. Identity as well becomes how you want to be known by others. And in the managing political situations, it requires that you're very clear about what you bring to the table.
Mm-hmm.
And determination is making sure that you're committed to your outcome and you know what's the outcome that you're looking for, what's the journey that you want to take. Do you want to put up a good fight or do you want to facilitate a win? Because those two things are different, right?
Yes, right.
And then taking action, making sure that if it's important enough that you're getting a seat at the table, better do your homework and make sure that you're taking the initiative to get prepared, which sometimes takes much longer than you might think it would when you're getting a lot of pushback from different folks. So when we look at the importance of managing different tricky situations at work and being politically savvy, it's really important that women especially are clear about why you've been invited to that table and be very clear what's your role at that time. I have a whole bunch of roles when I'm doing my job, but when I'm at that particular table, it's important to know who else is at that table and what do they expect of me and being able to fulfill those expectations. Being clear about how you engage when you're at that table. What's your focus? What's your vocabulary? What's the energy that you're putting into the room and sharing with other people? And making sure you know how to work the table. there's people who aren't going to say anything, and in not saying something, they say quite a bit sometimes. So being able to move from telling your story to fostering dialogue is a really good way to make sure that you are hearing the voices around the table and being able to speak to their concerns. And I would say in that, identity starts to it's important to be relevant. And you want people to understand, well, oh, here comes Kathleen. I know that she knows what's going on. I know that she's more than 3 questions deep when I want to ask her questions about, fill in the blank, whatever the project is. And so having agency and making sure that um, what it is that your stance is and what's the actions that you're going to take. What do you need of other people? So your identity becomes one of being um, a resource and somebody that people can go to for answers. Um, and a lot of that comes from determination and doing your homework and making sure that you understand the agendas and you seek the opinions of not only of stakeholders, but key influencers in the organization. And as you go out and do your homework and you have to demonstrate a willingness to ask questions, to listen to feedback that you might prefer not to hear, but you learn a lot when people are pushing back from you, if you can stay open to their questions. And accepting that you might not have the best answer until you go and talk to those people and you get some pushback. And so that determination to listen and understand becomes really the perseverance part of it, right? And then putting all that learning into action. Make sure that you understand those advocates out there, socialize your ideas, listen to what people have to say. And really, when you're listening to what they have to say, that gives you content and context for fostering dialogue when you get around the table. Asking people for your support before you go into a meeting. If somebody raises a question, asking them, can you raise that question when we're in the meeting? Because I think other people will share that question with you. So I look at VIDA and the components of VIDA as really helping to give grounding to that perseverance so that you can understand the needs and demands of the people around the table and then do what you need to do to make sure that you're meeting them.
How has this affected you as a person? Are you a first generation, second generation Latina?
I am second generation. My grandparents are Belgian, Mexican, and Apache, my great grandparents. My parents came to California in 1951 on a motorcycle. And my father was a mechanic. My mother was a homemaker. And growing up in California, in the Bay Area, our parents told us that we were Californians. They'd never said that we were Latinos. And they did that because they didn't want us to experience the same discrimination that they had experienced in El Paso. And then my grandparents, my parents, my aunts and uncles, they all spoke Spanish at home. So we actually thought nothing of your elders having a secret language. Most of my friends in elementary school, their parents spoke a foreign language as well. So I just thought all parents, spoke a foreign language. But it wasn't until the Equal Rights Amendment was passed that one day my dad came home, got us all together. We thought we were getting a puppy. And he's like, okay, everybody, if anybody asks from this day forward, you're a Chicana. And we thought that was terrific. We didn't know why, but it was a lot of celebrating and things going on. And I was about 10 years old at that time. And slowly after that, it became really clear that there was this beauty in history that was unknown to us at the time. And we learned to celebrate and understand the journey and the lessons that our family had learned all along the way. So I'm so, blessed that happened. I wish it had happened earlier in my life, but yeah, that's my story.
Oh, well, that's wonderful, Kathleen. Thank you so much for having joined us on Speakers Who Get Results. LatinaVIDA is really a wonderful resource. I've had great fun reading through it and looking at all the marvelous work that you're doing. And it's definitely an organization to be celebrated and I love the idea of using the word life as your acronym. So Vida, that's one of the delightful things of, okay, well, let's do this. Let's lead a good life. And this should help us build a world. I hope we're going to build a world where our daughters say, what do you mean you had to make a law to help women be equal? And the sons would say, what do you mean you had to make a law to help women get equal? What is that? So hopefully we're building a generation where at least in a couple of generations, that our children won't have to deal with this kind of discrimination. Maybe I'm an optimist, but it allows me to get up in the morning and say, okay, we can do better today.
Yeah, we are very fortunate to be building these communities and really watching young women take advantage of opportunities that a lot of us, we weren't afforded that back.
Well, societies evolve in the times that they evolve, and pendulum swings one way or another. And hopefully I think of it as a spiral. So hopefully we may be back here again, but hopefully we've learned a little bit more in the meantime. So great. Kathleen Chávez-Rège, thank you so much for jumping in at almost the last minute to be the guest. This was a delightful conversation. This has been Speakers Who Get Results. And if you enjoyed the conversation, if you learned something, please tell your friends, subscribe to us, whatever app you listen to podcasts on, subscribe to us on YouTube. And best of all, leave us a good review on Apple Podcasts. That's the ones that matters. And that will allow us to bring more interesting people like Kathleen into Speakers Who Get Results. This has been Speakers Who Get Results. I'll see you on the next one.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
We have just concluded another great episode of Speakers Who Get Results with your host, Elizabeth Bachman. If you got value from today's episode, please feel free to share us with your friends and colleagues. You may also visit elizabethbachman.com for additional resources. Be sure to tune in every week for new episodes, and thanks for tuning in.